Thanks for joining me for this video tutorial on Azure Recovery Services Vault Overview and how to create one. Right, if you would go to my blog bcloudnotes.com, there I created a recent post about Azure Recovery Services Vault Overview and how you can create one. So here I discussed about the basic information about Azure Recovery Services Vault, why we need one, what is the use cases, right? So basically, we create a Recovery Services Vault to use it with Azure Backup or Azure DR solution, right? ASR, Azure Site Recovery, right? So using the key things you need to keep in mind, like if you are creating it for backup, then it should be in the same region where your VMs are located. And the other thing is you can have 500 volt within a subscription, and per vault you can have up to 1000 virtual machines which can be configured for backup. And the other thing is using Azure backup, the maximum frequency of backup for a single day is once a day, right? However, like if you are having like your backup server configured with Azure backup and recovery services vault, in that case I believe the number is twice a day. There are some other features here talked about features. It provide you enhanced capability to help secure data, right? So that is where basically this is something from the perspective of on-prem, where you would have MFA and other things. The other thing is even if your on-prem backup server is compromised, the data that is there on cloud is safe and secure. The other thing is for any key changes, it needs privileged access. The other thing is central monitoring of your hybrid IT environment. So that is from the perspective of backup, where you have like your cloud environment, and at the same time you are also like having your VM backup configured for using the Azure backup. Another thing is Azure rollback access control. So that is where it provide you like a granular access control, where you can provide the access which is required, like whoever is need to manage the backups, you can provide them the required access. Soft delete, this is another feature. So what it does is it provide you an option to enable the soft delete thing, right? And once you will enable soft delete on any recovery services vault, you will get an edit 14 days. So where like whatever backup intentionally or unintentionally get deleted, if you want to take it back, you can get back from, right? Cross region restore. So this is another feature of it, where you can enable the redundancy of your data, having the redundancy configured as either locally or geo, right? But in some certain regions you would also see the zonal region. So that's something new. It's not something available in all the regions. So that is where if you have that enabled, so in case if your primary region is down for any reason, you will get an option to restore your VM in a secondary reason, right? So this is something I was talking about, storage redundancy. So ideally you will get this local redundancy, right, where your data is like available within 3 data centers in a same location. So your data is replicated like within the same location to 3 different data centers. Then geo-redundant storage, so that is where your data is synchronously replicated to a physical location, like 3 times within a single physical location, and then copies data asynchronously to single physical location in the secondary region, right? Encryption setting, it gives you the encryption settings, so you can configure it, right? By default it provide you that server-side encryption using platform management key. However, if you want to make changes, you can make those changes. Now Azure site recovery, so this is another thing which you can configure using Azure Recovery Services Vault, or we can call it, in order to configure Azure Site Recovery, you would be required to have a recovery services vault created. You will create a recovery services vault. Within that, you will enable replication and then create your recovery plan. Recovery plan is nothing but you are mentioning the steps which needs to be taken when a failover would happen, like how the VM's power on can be orchestrated. So that is something we will configure here. And then I mentioned some of the other further reads that you can read about, right? The last bit I want to, like, from the theory perspective, I want to mention, uh, so you can use Azure Site Recovery for Azure to Azure or Azure to on-prem scenario. Like if you are thinking from the perspective of any other cloud vendor, so that is something would be considered a kind of on-prem, right? So that is where you would be required to create your process server, right? And using those process server, you will create the connectivity register to Vault and then enable the replications, right? So let's not waste any more time, and let me jump to Azure portal and let me show you how you can create a recovery services vault, and what are the basic options available from the perspective of security, storage redundancy, and related stuff, and how you can, if you want to use it for backup or for site recovery, how you can configure that. So that's something would be very high level, because here my objective is to show you how you can go and create a recovery services vault. So let me jump into Azure portal. Okay, let me go to, this vault is, so my credentials are already saved in browser, so it would simply pop up me to, okay, it's favorites. Otherwise, what I can do, I can directly go to the global search bar, and from there I can look for recovery services vault. So here on this page, this is the recovery services vault plate. So that is from where you can create or manage your recovery services vault, right? So these are the recovery services vault I created earlier. So let me create a new one. First, on this recovery services vault plate, you need to click on create. So this is something would bring you to another screen, right? And on that, in the screen, you will be required to provide the recovery services vault name and other related detail. Here the most important thing is the location region where you want to have your recovery services vault created, right? So on this page, what you need to do, first thing, you need to select your subscription, right? So you need to select your subscription. Here I have only one subscription, so that's selected. Now you need to select your resource group. So that is where you can either create one, or you can use any of the existing. So I mean, if you would talk from the production perspective, then I believe you would have a dedicated resource group for the same, or you will create you would have some core resource group. That is where you would create this recovery services vault, right? However, here I'm just going to use this test RG. That is where I will create. Okay, so it's asking me vault name, so I will give it a vault name, recovery services vault, right? And then suppose I am creating it for Central India, right? So let me put Central India 01. This is the number. Okay, then I will select the region as Central India. So here, as I mentioned earlier, you need to keep one thing in mind. You will create your recovery services vault in the same region where you have your VMs stored. If you would create your recovery services in any other region, you won't be able to use that vault to take backup of your VM, which are in any other region. Okay. So once we have all the information fields, subscription, resource group, bolt name and the reason. Hit review and create, or if you want to add tags here, you can add tags, right? But so suppose I'm just putting a tag of support owner, right? So tagging is something which is very important from the governance perspective. So that's another topic which I would talk like in one of the future sessions. So let me click on review and create. So I put on this page you can review information. Once done, click hit on create. Okay. So this is something might take a few minutes, right? So meanwhile, jump into the recovery services vault plate where I have some existing recovery services vault. So not those services. So that is where the show you the different options which are available with recovery services vault. So let me go to recovery services vault. Not sure if it's done. No, yeah, it's done. Okay, so let's go to this one only. Okay, either you can directly go to click on this go to resource, or you can just hit refresh and hopefully okay, it's not okay, it's there. So this is the one that I created for this go to resource, or you can just hit refresh and hopefully okay, it's not okay, it's there. So this is the one that I created for Central India. So let me go there. Okay, hide me this side pane. Okay, so as you can see, so this is the landing page for recovery services vault. As you can see from here, you can configure your backup, you can enable site recovery, you can delete it or refresh the recovery services vault, right? Within here you would see the similar options, the overview. This is related to different documentations. If you would click here, it would show you the backup detail, if there are any backups which are configured and stored in this recovery services vault. From here you can see any site recovery, like which is configured, any replication which is configured for any of the VM using this recovery services vault. Okay, so in this left menu, the first left menu, first item overview, secondary, you can see any activity which has happened with regards to this recovery services vault. Here you can put filter, time span, and then can see, right? This is access control, from where you can like assign required fine gain access to anyone who needs to manage this recovery services vault or access this recovery services vault, right? So you can add that information from here. Click role assignment, add, and from there you can add that. So another is tag. This is nothing but just the metadata, right? You can put the like support on our application or whatever detail you need to fill here, right? Diagnosis. So this is something, if there is any platform side or any issue, that is something you can get by clicking on this option, right? uh, Identity. Okay, so that is from where you can enable a system assigned identity. Show you something within this properties button, right? Once you will go to properties, so I was talking about those soft delete, right? And storage redundancy settings. So that's something you will find here. So you need to go to your recovery services vault, then properties, right? And from there you can check. Next thing is backup configuration. If you want to make any changes in the storage redundancy, right? So by default you would see it set it as zero redundant. If you want to like save some cost, or if this is for non-prod workload, so based on your requirement you can set it to locally redundant and can save some cost. But the trade-off is, like in that case it would be locally, so in case of any reason why failure, you won't be able to or restore the VMs which are there, right? So this is the geo redundant, where your data is being replicated across the region, right? Here you can set like if you want to enable the cross-region restore. So if you would enable it here, you would be able to restore whatever VM backups are being stored here. You would be able to restore those VMs in your secondary region. However, this is something would increase your cost, so you need to keep that in mind. Okay. Okay, let me cancel it, close it. Then encryption setting, that is something I was talking about, right? By default you would see the platform managed. It's something which is like having server-side encryption using platform managed key. If you want to make any changes in that, you can make those changes from here. Okay, let me go back. Under security setting, that is where I can enable that soft delete to recover any removed backup within 14 days. So it would, if you would enable this soft delete, so it gives you an ability to like to recover any removed backup within 14 days. So from here you can download recovery services agent if you want to like enable it on any VM. Security pin enter the PM to come when prompted by Azure backup. This pin expires. So this is something I believe related to while you are setting it for on-prem. Okay, so let me close it. Okay, I close the recovery services folder completely. Let me go there again. So this lock thing, if I would enable it, it would restrict anyone from removing it, right? If you are going in and creating a lock, it would be either read, it would make it read only, or it would put a restriction where no one would be able to remove it until unless you would like disable this lock. So let me cancel it now here. By going to this backup portion here, you can select like what kind of workload you are running, right? Azure stack on premises. Based on that, you can further configure it from the backup perspective, right? So if you're selecting it, you would click configure backup, right? So that is where it would ask you to create backup policies, and once you would have those backup policies created, then you can go ahead and you can enable backup for different virtual machines, right? I won't see any machine because this vault is something which is in central India. There I don't have any VM created in my account. Let me go back. This option is for site recovery. Right, if you would go here, you would see enable virtual machine site recovery. So it would give you an option to configure it for Azure to Azure, right? Where from one region to another, right? In some regions you will also get an option to configure a zonal replication, right? Then VMware machines to Azure, and then Hyper-V machines to Azure. So suppose if you need to like configure it within Azure from one region to another, then you would be required to enable replication for VMs. Once you would enable that, you would be required to create your recovery plans, right? So once you will click on this enable replication, that it would bring you to another option, and that is where you would be required to select your source location. You would always have it this option as resource manager, and then source resource group, and as this is something where we are configuring like region to region recovery, so we would keep it no, and then we will proceed, and on next step you would see your virtual machines and all that stuff, right? So however, this is something we will discuss separately in detail once I will have a session or like create a video tutorial for like how you can enable replication. So let me go back. Okay, now these options here, you can see if you have any backup configured. So here from this page you can see that detail, right? Replicated item from this pane, you can see like clicking on this, you can see if there is any VMs which are configured for replication. You will see that detail here. Here you will see your backup policies, like on-prem perspective, any backup infrastructure, site recovery infrastructure, recovery plans, and using this you can generate your web reports, right? And then here you can configure your alerting, logging, backup jobs, and backup alerts, site recovery alerts, right? And all these options are related, right? And in case if you need any support from Microsoft, you can directly go ahead, click on this. You don't need to go to your any other screen to create a support ticket for Microsoft. You can directly go ahead and click on this, create new support, and then from there you can create a support ticket. So this was pretty much all from how you can create a recovery services vault and what are all the options available within a recovery services vault. So thank you guys. Thanks for joining me for this session. Thanks. Bye.